All right. This is it, Phil. This is it.
What is it?
It's the precipice. We've reached the point at which the good fights end and the bad fights begin. UFC 270.
The precipice. It is. It's the precipice. It's the edge of the desert, whatever you want to call it. Bad times coming.
What good times we had, though. UFC 277. What a way to go out, you know? What a way to send us off into the twilight years of the rest of August. Why does it have to be my birthday month, by the way? All my youth, Phil. August was the month when school started. You know, and now that I'm a grown man, I have a real job that people respect me for.
Uh-huh.
You know, I'm successful. And I gotta put up with this?
Yes.
I gotta have the spell of incredible UFC cards end just before my birthday month ensues.
I think it's just must be because you're an affront to God. These coincidences can only mean one thing.
You really went for it. Jesus Christ.
When there's only one explanation.
Yeah. Maybe it's because you're an abomination, if you considered that. Well,
always the best way to console anyone having problems in their life, I find.
I guess it's fair, because my problem is really just that we had an incredible card at UFC 277. This is Heavy Hands, by the way. A very strange intro. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm still drinking coffee. I'll probably be very pepped up by the end of this segment, especially because we have the main event of UFC 277 to talk about, that being Amanda Nunes versus Juliana Pena 2. Although I guess it was actually billed as Juliana Pena versus Amanda Nunes 2. Pena not quite successfully defending the title. Not quite. Close. After that,
yes.
Brandon Moreno versus Kai Kara France. We also had, Derek Lewis got smoked in this card, but we didn't bother talking about it last week. That now feels in hindsight like a justified decision. We had Alexandre Pantoja beating Alex Perez in classic fashion. There was just lots of good stuff on this card. And next week's card sucks, and the next several weeks' cards are pretty similar in terms of actually, at least they're not fleshed out, even the ones that have good main events. So, this is it. Let's cherish it while we have it. Let's spend an hour and a half solely talking about Amanda Nunes versus Juliana Pena, and then maybe right at the end, we'll sneak in about 3 minutes discussion of Thiago Santos versus Jamal Hill.
Sounds about right.
Okay, great. Nunes, Pena, 2. Was it everything you hoped it'd be?
Was very funny.
It was very funny.
Don't know if it was everything I hoped it would be, but it was still... I was starting to convince myself that there was just a route for Amanda Nunes to somehow just neutralize Juliana Pena, but God bless Juliana Pena.
Yes. Oh, God bless her for
sure. She did not allow that to happen.
No.
I think, honestly, if she had been more tentative, I think she would have happily had the Shevchenko fight with her. No, as I said, bless her. She really went for it.
She insisted that Nunes have an incredibly exciting beatdown type of performance. It was very funny, and it was also awesome. I mean, it wasn't everything I wanted, but it was, because there's something about this series of fights, Phil, that is just magical. Because this wasn't the funny outcome I had in mind. Though I thought it was a distinct possibility that Nunes would just go in there and dominate. But it makes the first fight so much funnier. It was so stupid and bad that now we see that Nunes is capable of making one in some ways small and in other ways very broad and overdone adjustment, essentially, and then just crush Juliana Pena with ease. It only makes that first fight better in retrospect.
Right, because, I mean, you can compare it to other big upsets, right? That, I mean, obviously the main one is like Sarah GSP, where Sarah knocks him out the first time, and then GSP just utterly dominates him to the extent that you just go, oh, yes, we know where these two stand. And that's the best comparison, but, like, doesn't bring forth the difference between what Sarah GSP won and Pena Nunes won looked like.
Right.
Which is that
GSP blew up. He didn't go down in flames for like 4 minutes straight.
Yeah, that's the thing. GSP goes down to, like, he gets badly rocked and then he gets flied on and finished. And that's it. Right? It's pretty much the end of things.
Standard upset material.
Nunes basically, it's like that one punch combination, like when he went to the body and then went upstairs, or whatever Sarah knocked GSP down with.
It was wide right to the body, overhand right.
Yeah, it's like Sarah did that to GSP like 15 times in a row, and GSP just kept looking at him like it was magic.
Really incredible. And I have to say, like, I can't describe how much I have enjoyed this series of fights, because right here, like, let's talk about one particular sequence before we get into the particulars. The one that everyone's going to be posting clips of forever is, this fight's, as it's already been compared numerous times, Miocic Verdum moment.
Yes.
When Pena is running forward, as a friend of the show, Kyle McLaughlin, pointed out, as a 135-pound woman throwing a far sloppier combination than Fabricio Verdum. The funniest, just pumping, like, we're talking Matt Riddle versus, was it Sean Pierce?
Yes, I believe so.
We're talking Riddle Pierce levels of just running forward, nowhere near the target, no apparent intention to hit the target, just like, I have to do something, go, go, go. Feet out of position.
Yeah, it's like the arms are actually part of the running motion rather than like actual, like, things that are meant to hit a target.
It looks like one of those physics games,
Yes.
Where, like, you have to use
it is QWOP.
It's QWOP. You have to use like 5 keys to control each individual part of the body. And then the knockdown, but the knockdown is sick. It's such a good clip to repost. This is the conundrum of this fight. Like, it's in the series as a whole, this pairing between these two women it's simultaneously so stupid and so awesome. It's great. Like, I really like it. It's like
you get to see, much like the last fight, you can get to see variations on it over and over again.
Yes. But it's like high grade schlock, this matchup.
Yeah, you also haven't described the sequence. Would you like to?
Well, Juliana Pena comes in. I think she probably throws about 84 punches in this 5-second clip, none of which land. And Nunes just sort of backs off, cuts an angle, and hits her with a right hand that lands so clean. Both of Juliana Pena's feet come off the ground. It looks like she got shot with a 50 caliber bullet in like a fucking Schwarzenegger movie. She goes flying and lands on her shoulder blades. It literally looks like a stunt.
Yeah, it's like one of those ones where a superhero punches someone into the floor and like their upper body gets buried into the ground and their legs are just sticking out. She gets punched into the ground that hard.
Yes. The only way it could have been improved upon is if Amanda punched her and then while she was falling, placed a finger, just in the middle of her chest and smashed her through the plywood onto the concrete beneath.
And again, it must be said, this happened literally 15 seconds after it had already happened, just in a slightly less, poetically beautiful way.
Yeah, I think officially recorded there were 3 or 4 knockdowns. In my
I think
memory,
there were 3 official, but there's definitely 4.
Yeah, in my memory, there were 38 knockdowns because that sequence repeated so many times. And that's another thing, like, so stupid. The same time, the heart on Juliana Pena.
I know.
The line between bravery and stupidity has never been thinner, Phil. The determination to just keep getting knocked down. Somehow, all these times she was hurt, they were never more than flash knockdowns. Like, she appeared to recover almost immediately every time and just went right back to this suicidally aggressive game plan. Because she had nothing else she could do.
Decked in obviously, like, incredibly clean punches from the biggest hitter.
Yeah.
Like, in
women's MMA,
like
basically.
Women's MMA history, yes. Like, just, and you look at them, you look at them in replay, and you're just like, no, that is absolutely, like, the worst place to get punched. And, you know, she's totally off balance, she's standing square.
Yeah.
And Nunes puts everything into it, and she just gets absolutely decked and then just jumps back up and goes back to it.
She hit every target you can knock somebody out with, too. She got hit on the chin, she got hit behind the ear, she got hit on the temple. They all visibly hurt her, but just for a moment. I don't know. Again, I just want to start with just my enthusiasm for the matchup between these women, and they should do a third one because there's literally nothing else to do.
Yeah. Done with it.
And if they do a third one, we'll get into this later. I'll just tease that other people have already suggested a particularly hilarious adjustment that Juliana Pena might make. But first of all, let's talk about what Nunes did differently, because she herself acknowledged one of the primary things we were worried about, not a technical thing, one of the X Factory type of things that I usually try to stay away from, but I just had this feeling that a big part of that loss was just that Nunes didn't particularly care. And my worry was that she would not be able to get that motivation back. I specifically compared her to Jose Aldo and said, not everyone's Jose Aldo, where that hunger gets sort of reignited and apparently indefinitely. And I think you cannot deny that loss motivated the shit out of Amanda Nunes. And I think this is possibly the best condition we have seen her in a long time, if not ever. Because this was a fairly torrid pace, this fight, almost all of which was just Nunes landing the hardest punches she could find right on Pena's chin. And then a lot of wrestling, and both women were tired, but I'm sure I was not the only one who was thinking at numerous points, this could still go south if Amanda just gets tired.
Yes.
And because
every time she knocked her down with an incredibly clean punch, and it didn't seem to visibly deter Juliana Pena. You were just like, is this taking a hit out of Nunes' heart meter?
Right, exactly. And no, she was clearly in phenomenal shape. So physically, I think it's really obvious that motivation was a factor in the first fight, and that she took on that challenging obstacle of rediscovering your motivation after having been a defending champ for years.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways she was fortunate because Pena has such horrific takedown defense, and that Nunes was able to safely kind of ride out those last 3 rounds with top control. He gave up every single takedown, and I don't know, perhaps she thought, this is it. I'm finally grappling with her. I can submit her. But Nunes is a very good top control grappler, and is also just bigger. And yeah, I mean, so I think it was also, the fact that he just had the skill set where Nunes had major advantages everywhere that allowed Nunes to insulate herself for a few rounds. I mean, I think if was just a more... I think if Pena had got top position, basically, Nunes had actually failed on shots and had them reversed, I think that might have gotten very badly wrong.
I think so. She was still walking that razor's edge. I mean, that is just a problem with Nunes as a fighter, that she gets, I think, really like emotionally intense, and she throws really hard and it really exerts herself in every position. And so, which is why one of the major like long-term adjustments we've seen over the course of her title reign has really just been her slowing the pace of her fights and trying to manage. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, any one of those situations could have still gone wrong. There was still this feeling, even going into the 5th round, maybe something goes disastrously wrong and Pena gets top position and just starts beating Nunes up or something.
I've honestly never felt more kind of tension in a
one-sided fight.
An obvious fight, in a fight that is obviously like going into the 5th round, and it's whatever it is.
It's like 49 or whatever.
Yeah.
I guess no, going into the 5th, it would be 40, 34, 33, something.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, several 10-8 rounds in there, probably. Although, knowing the modern judges, probably not, but by reasonable standards, there were a shitload of 10-8 rounds in this fight.
Yeah, and actually, to credit Nunes, even if she was, even if she was doing it to conserve, she was pretty active from top position. I mean, she was. Pena.
Yeah, she was. I'm really, really impressed by this performance from Nunes. Yeah, and it's always good to see somebody in such a dominant position get pushed like this and respond so well. Another layer to why this series is there's got to be a word for this. What is there a word for something when like you are simultaneously enjoying something with like a hint of irony, that you're like laughing at it, but you're also just reveling in it? It's like, I don't know. This is like how like nerds watch Twin Peaks. Where you're like, oh, it's making fun of soap operas, but at a certain point you're enjoying the soap opera. It's your in. There's something about this, and here's another wonderful instance of how simultaneously stupid and brilliant this is. Nunes' primary adjustment, because she too identified that slip jab was a problem.
Yep.
Was the most MMA adjustment you could possibly have, which was to just fight
so good.
almost the whole fight in southpaw. Because you can't jab a southpaw. We all know that.
Oh, it's impossible.
You can't. And Pena agreed, because she barely tried. She could not figure out how to even really get the jab going, because there's a hand in the way. It doesn't work. Now, I think, again, like, this is really stupid and a huge overcorrection. Like, the idea that you should have to... The number of problems that can come with adopting a different stance are many. Like, the number of other vulnerabilities you might be exposing yourself to. All these little details of balance and defense is completely different, and like it completely throws off your sort of pattern recognition and your muscle memory. If you're primarily a single stance fighter. The idea that all of those risks should be completely worthwhile just to make the one tactic your opponent has a little more difficult is ludicrous, and was also brilliant because it worked perfectly. It worked perfectly. Nunes' plan was don't stand orthodox and counter with the right hand as a hook, as a lead shot, which is a great punch to throw if you're a southpaw against an orthodox fighter. I've always said that. Yeah, I just love that. It's such a silly, complete...
It's the best adjustment since since Miocic and to the body against DC.
Yeah. Except it happened pre-fight, and it was...
It's pre-fight. They must have just had the board of equations with like dip jab and like a whole bunch of different things they were going to, and then like the eureka moment, they were like, what if we just stand the other way? She won't be able to do anything.
I think it's so great because like this is a thing with great stories, where a really good ending, and this is, to the story set up by the first fight. This is how it ended for now, the end of the chapter anyway. And a really good ending is often, I think, defined by this feeling that once the ending happens, you're like, that's the only way it could have ended. But you never see it coming before that point. So you're surprised, but it's so logical that it feels predictable.
Yeah, we really should have thought of it, shouldn't we?
Exactly.
Such an MMA thing to do.
Looking at it now, I mean, the fact that I had our graphics person, June, do a meme graphic for last week's episode, which was the one weird trick meme. Because that was the entirety of Pena's success. She won with one weird trick. And it seems so logical that the way to beat somebody who really just has one weird trick, I mean, discounting power and chin and determination, these are all factors, of course. But if the main problem is that jab, then it stands completely to reason that you would just come back with one weird trick of your own. And that this would cause the entirety of Pena's game to collapse. Because the one weird trick isn't there anymore. So yeah, beautiful. Do a third fight. And this has already been suggested by others, but I think the adjustment is rather obvious. You can't jab a southpaw, Phil. Unless you're a southpaw.
Yeah, I think David. I think it was David Rollin who's the first person to suggest to us on Twitter. It was like, what if Pena learns how to do the dipping jab from southpaw, which would be, I think I would literally just cry laughing.
Yeah,
if she was just chasing Nunes around the cage, and Nunes was just like, he goes, confidently goes southpaw. Then Pena just goes to southpaw with her and starts dip jabbing her with her right hand.
Yeah. I can't help but think of it in like an Ippo context, like you have the spectators, Nunes' corner. This
can this be?
All this drama, musical sting, and the action we're seeing is an incredibly slow motion image of Pena stepping forward with her right foot.
He's fighting like a completely different fighter now. Are we going to get out of this, brat?
So yeah, I loved it. It was, for a completely one-sided fight, something about it, man. It was awesome. I thought Nunes looked great, and at the same time, I thought it was such a laughably, straightforward, simple idea. But you also have to give full, unmitigated credit to her preparation, I think, physically and mentally. She was, there to fight a hard fight for 5 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, they both were.
Yeah, oh yeah, no doubt.
It was obviously just whatever happens, I've got to mentally break her, and credit to her. She never, ever stopped trying.
Even the submissions were coming closer after a certain point. She tried 8 that didn't succeed at all. And after that, she kept going for them. And a couple of those arm bars were kind of tight. They were kind of locked in. Yeah, I can't wrap my head around the kind of determination that drives Juliana Pena, or Amanda Nunes. I'm really impressed and I don't know, it almost makes me feel bad to be laughing at how silly these fights are, but this is the wonderful confusion of this experience for me, is that they are silly, they're outrageous, but they're also just unironically great, awesome performances.
Yep.
It's beautiful.
You can't front on either of them, how hard they fought at all.
No, God, no.
And yeah, I mean, I don't know what they do next. Do Nunes against Ketlin Vieira?
Yeah.
Or Arena Aldana?
I guess.
Just you do Pena against either one of them? That would be fine, I guess.
Sure.
There's a solid chance she would lose.
Oh, absolutely. She's not a particularly good fighter. She's just got a special little something that makes her a tricky opponent for Nunes. Yeah, I mean, Aldana's booked coming up very soon. I think she's booked on the 278 card, maybe? No, one of these. Maybe it was next week's card. Is she booked under the Veracruz card? Anybody? I don't know. Aldana's got a booking, and Vieira's got a win. A couple wins, and is looking a little more comfortable. So maybe, just do this again. Just give Pena the chance to figure out how to switch to southpaw. Please. It's so obvious. I just need to see if she picks up on that. Because if she comes into the cage and goes southpaw, I don't care what happens next. Anything can happen. It will be worth that single moment.
You get a fight number 4 where Nunes stands absolutely square, just double punches her.
Nunes spends her entire camp preparing to fight while doing a handstand. Something to get out of this stance conundrum. Yeah, I just do it again. Okay, let's take a break. I could talk about it all day and just keep repeating myself because it's just one of those things that words can't really capture how the so many ways in which I enjoy this and the first fight as a single unit of drama. But let's take a break and get on to the Flyweight interim title fight between Brandon Moreno and Kai Kara-France before looking down. Maybe we'll have time to look at the rest of the card. Maybe that'll be a bonus episode. Oh, by the way, I should mention before we go to our break that if you went on Patreon and you're like, wait, Connor posted a boxing commentary of Marco Antonio Barrera versus Prince Nassim Hamed, except there's no commentary. It's just two British guys talking. That's been corrected. Somehow I uploaded the video and posted the wrong link. So if you had a frustrating interaction with that, the correct video does exist, and the correct link for it is now in there. So find that on our Patreon if that sounds interesting to you, and likely you'll be looking forward to a short bonus episode coming up where we look at some more from this really quite strange and entertaining undercard. Anyway, Moreno versus Kara-France after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
All right, folks, welcome back to Heavy Hands. We're talking about the co-main event now, as promised. Brandon Moreno versus Kai Kara-France for the interim flyweight belt. Just before we get into the fight, Phil, I want to float an idea that I tweeted out while this fight was happening and get your take on it. The interim belt, it should be see-through, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Just inherent, that just makes obvious sense to me. It should be like transparent acrylic.
At least just like silver.
That somebody else said that, yeah. And that's a good suggestion too. It should be different.
Yeah.
It's silly that it just comes off the exact same production line that makes the regular UFC belts.
Should be transparent acrylic, then you can clip it on top of the real belt. Combine the two. In the same way that you get all the stupid ass little jewels that you get for winning things.
Yeah.
You should every different type of thing you defend in the UFC, you should get bullshit accessories.
Yeah, they should be modular.
Yeah, like you're a child, just holding out your toy.
Yeah, it should be see-through acrylic and it should light up when you walk. So anyway, this was for the bullshit belt in the flyweight division, setting up the fight that I said, let's just do that anyway, Figueiredo Moreno 4. It's now going to happen, so, no harm, no foul. And since that has now been secured, my dream of just having an endless series between two fighters, because what the hell else do you do in this division? I can say that I'm glad I got to see this fight because it was pretty cool. And interesting, because I'm not entirely sure what takeaways I have about it for Brandon Moreno. What did you make of it?
I mean, I thought in the aggregate, he largely followed the approach that you actually suggested for him.
Yeah.
That he fought completely measured pace. He just kind of picked Cara France off from range. That worked like really well for the first 2 rounds.
Yep. He looked to counter him with takedowns, like made Cara France come forward and looked to counter shoot.
So I think it kind of demonstrated pretty good game planning, but then also it sort of didn't work. It started to sort of not work.
Yeah. And I honestly wasn't even really sure it was working that well from the jump. There was just something shaky about this performance from Moreno to me. Where somehow it seems crazy, right? Like in the first fight, he goes out there, he's incredibly aggressive. He gets knocked down in the first round. But it doesn't feel shaky. It just feels like he's fearless, he's determined, he has his winning game plan, and he's sticking to it and adjusting as necessary, but he's not going to get away from the path to victory. And in this, I don't know. I mean, I thought Cara France actually, as we said, he did look better when he had to come forward. His takedown defense was really solid. His low kicks were very effective. This was a thing we haven't usually seen all that much from Cara France. He's usually mostly a boxer, but certainly a thing city kickboxing fighters like to do. And I thought that was a very effective choice, especially given, I don't know if he expected Moreno to kind of maintain range more or what, but he was getting those low kicks in. They were landing quite often. And I don't know, Moreno just seemed like it felt like it took him ages to just get his jab going. Like he had this long range approach, but I didn't feel super confident that he was racking up enough points for these to be super obvious rounds. And I got the sense I'm alone in this. A lot of other people were like, oh, obviously he's winning these rounds. I didn't feel they were that clear cut.
Oh, didn't. I mean, did definitely think he was winning the rounds, but I didn't feel like they were super dominant. I mean, partially it's because I think he was definitely trying to sort of, I think maybe in the way that Figueiredo had before him, he was trying to be technical and, to preserve himself so that he could go into a potential fourth Figueiredo fight and not actually rack up a ton of damage. Again, I'm not sure how well that worked. He looked pretty banged up by the end of the fight. I mean, I think one of the things that makes Brandon Moreno work as a fighter, we mentioned it last time, is his ability to combination punch. And it's not just that, not just when he's changing levels and working the body and so on, but it's also his tendency to double and triple up on his own jab.
Yeah.
Which was really the thing which I think was missing more so than also than his even just establishing his jab. It was just the fact that it was very the whole fight was really one at a time for Moreno.
Yeah, that is the thing.
Quite uncharacteristic.
Yeah, that there was a lot of a lot of empty space, a lot of posturing, a lot of the weird feinty, hand flappy stuff that he does. He's out here, making shadow puppets. Instead of just setting the range and giving Cara France things that he has to respond to. I think that's a very good way to sort of sum up the issue. Very one and done. Not a lot of building towards anything. And so the first person to really build towards anything was Kai Kara-France. Who, first was like coming forward way more, but even Moreno's corner, I think they also felt that this was not actually that clear cut, that Moreno was throwing single shots, which the counterpuncher was having a pretty easy time of responding to, even if they were narrowly winning in the rounds. And that at this range, at this pace, he was meanwhile absorbing way more attritive damage than Kara-France was. And so coming into round 3, he was told to get more aggressive. And he did. And then we saw what Kara-France is like actually really good at, and how there was sort of this disconnect between this new game plan Moreno was trying and his ability to then essentially dip right back into what he did in the first fight, which was all out aggression the entire time. So yeah, I mean, obviously there was a cut caused on the ground after Moreno got over aggressive. I think he leapt in with a kick. Got caught.
And Kara-France, really nice, just takedown, instantly put him on his back.
Yeah, it was like a classic Muay Thai. Caught the kick, swept out the base leg, and did work with the position. I mean, he wasn't fearful of getting his licks in as long as he was in Moreno's guard, and almost instantly split him open with an elbow, which fortunately for Brandon was on the cheek, not over the eye. But then for the rest of that round, I thought Kara-France looked great. The more aggressive Moreno was still largely coming in with single shots, and Kara-France's distance management going backwards is it's always been good. He's always had good sort of small step footwork. Always had a style built around he doesn't make a lot of defensive moves unless he's prepared to come back with offense off of them. He's a well-schooled counterpuncher. And I think not having established this pace where Kara-France, there's too much information for him to compute, which is sort of what happened in their first fight. Not having established that problem and just forced Kara-France to sort of calculate things over and over and over, Kara-France was kind of tooling Moreno up on the counter in round 3. Feinting, drawing out the single jab, and then coming in with combinations of his own. I mean, he was the more effective combination puncher, and then also picking his moments to just sort of come in and fire off the fence on his own initiative. Come in behind a feint, and there was a particularly nice combo, which I think was a right uppercut, left hook coming forward. A couple of good body shots in there from Kara-France, setting up those counters to the head. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, is this a Kara-France improvement thing? Is it a different approach from Moreno thing? Is it a combination of these factors? Is there any takeaway?
Yeah, I think it probably is.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one notable thing about Moreno's approach in that third round is that you could see him start to key into that.
Yes.
Left kick, the finish exchange to base France out of the pocket. He landed or came close to landing it at least 2 or 3 times before the final one, which ended up landing clean and basically finishing the fight.
Threw it to the legs too, I think, just to sort of box Kara-France in. Yeah, he was hitting multiple targets with that leg.
So I mean, and what that actually felt like was rather than stepping back into championship level Brandon Moreno, in some ways that felt like just stepping back into original Brandon Moreno. Much like with Rose Namajunas, you got to remember who these people used to be who Brandon Moreno used to be, rather than just being a insanely tough boxer and submission grappler and all this other kind of stuff that we've seen sort of built out through 15 rounds with Davison Figueiredo. When he was first in the UFC, it was just really like an opportunistic finisher, and much like Namajunas, he was he beat people that he probably didn't have rights he didn't really have much of a chance of beating like Dustin Ortiz just by kicking him upside the head.
Yeah.
So he's still, you got to remember that he just has a nose for a finish. But yeah, I think it's one of those fights where if you were on Team Kai Kara France, it would have been really heartbreaking.
Oh, for sure.
Because it really did look like he was starting to figure something out.
And if you were nominally on Team Moreno, which is not to say that I'm opposed to Kai Kara France, I really enjoy him as a fighter. But I've watched Brandon Moreno improve, and that's always a sure way to sort of like get your hooks in me as a fan.
Mm-hmm.
Then I found it a little troubling that it really did. I mean, that is what you just described is exactly the feeling I had watching this, which is like, this is like a pre-Moreno Kara France 1 version of Brandon Moreno in a lot of ways, where he's just out there sort of like, again, a lot of posturing, a lot of sort of playing at things that weren't really tremendously effective, and just kind of having this really close fight where without that finish, who's to say? The momentum was shifting strongly, and honestly, Kara France looked like the better boxer in this matchup. And that was not the case in their first meeting. So I don't know. Does that?
I mean, I'm willing to at this point. I'm willing to put this down to being the. He still found a way to win, which is what you've got to
sure
look for. And I'm mostly going to put this down to attempting to preserve himself in the same way that Figueiredo did in their second fight.
Yeah,
he was like, I don't need to be this guy who can. Who just gets into these blood and guts wars the whole time. I can be a technician who fights from range. And I think the answer that they've both found out is no, you can't.
Yeah, you can't really. Not unless the other guy is like really recklessly coming after you, because he looked like a better back foot outside fighter against Figueiredo the first time. Where he just had a lot of things coming at him, and it was just, it was easier, I think, to make those decisions. It sort of felt like it must have felt very similar to his performances where he was the one pressuring in and creating exchanges. They were just coming to him.
And I think just Figueiredo is also just a less crafty fighter than Kara France, but he's just obviously 3 times as physically overwhelming.
Yeah. I mean, you may be right. I think quite probably we're looking at. Obviously Moreno came in with a certain game plan, and it maybe didn't suit him as well as I certainly would have hoped that it did, and didn't solve the problem of Kara France as efficiently as he expected it to. That, in fact, there is a whole lot of nuance to fighting a sort of fencing match at range. And he's probably better suited to going in and tearing people apart like a little buzzsaw. But yeah, I'll be very curious to see. So does it change? Does it give you any concrete reason to think differently about the now, I'm guessing, soon to be scheduled? Although who knows? We'll see what happens with Figueiredo's contract disputes and stuff. But does it change the way you view the upcoming 4th fight between Figueiredo and Moreno?
No, not really at this point. I think I've just settled in these two.
Yeah.
After the second fight, I was going to be like, "Oh, is Figueiredo getting too big for the weight class? Is he losing interest? Does he?" And then no, he came out and he looked fine, and I think Moreno will look fine. I think they're made for each other in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it is guaranteed.
And I think we just get another. Yeah. I think the second fight is probably the anomaly of the series, and perhaps if Moreno had come in fighting like that, like he did in this fight against Figueiredo at some point, he also would have had, this deflating major loss in the series.
Oh yeah, I really hope this is a fight-specific game planning thing, because if this is the approach he's going to bring, that's not going to bode well, I don't think, against Figueiredo.
Mm-hmm. Because you can see the adjustment, you can see the rationale. Because in that second fight, he came out. The third fight against Figueiredo, he came out acting like Figueiredo could not hurt him at all.
Yeah.
Just, who is this guy? Why is he in front of me? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm just going to get him out of there, and then Figueiredo put him on his ass a few times.
Yeah.
And I think this is perhaps just a very classic MMA overreaction. But no, I think those two, Moreno, Figueiredo, just until one of them physically disintegrates, I think they're just going to have great competitive fights.
Mm-hmm. Well,
About you? About you, does it change your...
Yeah, I don't know.
More apprehensive?
It makes me apprehensive. It doesn't give me anything concrete. Just because there's always I never trust that if I see a change in an MMA fighter's performance that it's necessarily a fight specific thing. I'm always concerned that this may be some new direction in which they're trying to take their style. So it gives me apprehension, but I don't know. It's a complete mystery to me now, and there seems every possibility that it was just because what essentially happened here too was that you could essentially get rid of those first 2 rounds of this fight, and that third round is not dissimilar from the first round of their first fight, Moreno and Cara France. It's like he just realized he had to go back to what worked and got into some really difficult, scrappy exchanges where, who knows, 2 more rounds, he may very well have just worn Cara France down and overloaded him with information once again. It's pretty much what he did the first time around. A very Max Holloway kind of win that first fight was.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he came back around to being, I think, more or less the same guy he was, and had similar difficulties to the first round of that first fight. So I don't know. I will just say before we move on that for complex emotions, this card really delivered, because the call out at the end where Figueiredo came into the cage looking like a supervillain,
Yep.
Completely, he's decked out. He's wearing the kind of shirts that Furio on The Sopranos wear. It's all glittery with embroidered patterns.
Mm-hmm. He's really leading into the bullfighter thing.
Yeah. Very, very sort of Spanish flair. He's got the big gold chain. He's got the belt on his shoulder, the glasses, just looking menacing. And Brandon Moreno's like, my daughter's watching this, so I want to say, please fight me. Thank you. And Figueiredo, the moment where Figueiredo, he made the calculation, you could see it on his face, that he's like, oh, I can't act like a dick right now.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's, he wanted an adversarial stare down to hype the fight, and Moreno just sucked all the air out of the room, but it led to a really I don't know, endearing human moment between these two guys. They must respect the hell out of each other, these 3 fights they've been through.
Hell yes.
So I really enjoyed that sort of sense of camaraderie that unexpectedly came out of that, and I very much look forward to the 4th fight. I know there's still a bunch of dorks out there complaining that, I'm desperate to see Askar Askarov fight for the title. Pantoja is the other obvious one, and now
I was gonna say, Pantoja fans have real reason to be a little bit pissed.
But you are going to look back, no matter what happens in the 4th fight, you're going to look back in 10 years on this 4-fight minimum series between Figueiredo and Moreno and remember it so fondly as this incredibly epic multi-chapter story. And there aren't enough of those in UFC history. So I'm perfectly happy to have these. These are the series that legends are made of. These are the kinds of things that boxing fans talk about, fights, series of fights that happened 50 plus years ago. People still talk about. People still talk about Willie Pep, Sandy Sadler. Those things are still remembered fondly. So I'm very happy to have everything work out and have a 4th fight between them, no matter what happens. I think it's the right way to go. And I do totally understand. Pantoja absolutely deserves a shot. He should get it next. That works for me. These guys are pretty active.
Yeah. Let's just hope they can get them in the cage. And yes, let's hope Figueiredo gets paid.
Yeah.
Because he sounds disgustingly underpaid.
He does.
Pay that man. And Get him in the cage. And get Pantoja in there as well, because, yeah, he beat, as he said, he beat the two people who were fighting for the interim belt within 2 weeks of each other.
Yeah.
He's 3-0 against, he was 3-0 against the two of them.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll be back after this. We're going to look at Jamal Hill versus Thiago Santos. And if you want to hear more from UFC 277, it looks like that is going to be relegated to a bonus episode. So you will find that alongside my commentary of Barrera versus Hamed up there on our Patreon for $3. It's not worth it, really, like, but it is only $3. So just throw me a goddamn bone. Hill versus Santos after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Let's talk about next week's main event, Phil. Jamal Hill, Thiago Santos. It's a light heavyweight fight.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, this has been Heavy Hands for this week.
That was such a relief to just do a short third segment for once.
It'll still be short. There's not a whole lot to say about this fight, but I don't know. What do you think of Jamal Hill? He's
okay.
He's good. He's really good in certain ways. He's obviously hugely powerful. He's got a big frame, which makes it possible for him to deliver that power against a wide range of opponents. I mean, the guy is 6'4". He's got practically, I think, an 80-inch wingspan. So it's not like he's quite John Jones. He was obviously smaller than Johnny Walker, but not by much. He's a big dude. And he's super accurate.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing to...
He appears to be tough. He's accurate. He hits the body. I mean, he hasn't done it in recent fights, but certainly his fight with OSP, he absolutely destroyed OSP's torso en route to knocking him out with shots to the head. So there is a lot to like, but he's also like, he's such a mess. Technically.
Yeah, I mean, he's in weird ways. He's like the Bizarro. He's like the Bizarro version of Thiago Santos, where like it's a lot of movement, and he's quite tricky, and he's very accurate. But Hill looks like an image of a much cleaner. Well, I mean, essentially, he throws straight punches. The main thing is that they're both just rely on moving around a lot and then hitting people accurately with a lot of power.
Yeah. I would describe Hill as I'm gonna coin a new term here, as a heavy bag technician. Because when Hill lands his punches, he can then follow up with really good combinations. If he gets the first shot in and the opponent stays where they are, say he like hits you in the belly with the left hand, and you fall back into the fence and you're momentarily pinned, then he is liable to hit you with 5 more well thrown punches. And so long as each punch in the sequence lands, he'll look really slick. But if one misses, or he gets hit back mid-sequence, you see that it is all a facade, because he is throwing everything into his punches. Everything. And when one falls short or goes wide of the mark, he completely like falls over. He's really, really off balance just because he literally needs the target as a crutch to keep himself balanced for the follow-up punches.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like I said, he's a difficult one for me to wrap my head around because there are moments where he looks really, really good. And I think it does just come down to accuracy. Like, this style only works because A, he can take the shots that come back at him. And doesn't, he's not a flinchy fighter. He's like Thiago Santos, hair trigger on counters. So he will make up for the many defensive flaws in his game by just being willing to instantly fire back and punish you for any success you dare to have against him. But yeah, like in open space, there's just a lot wrong with Hill's form. And there are numerous defensive flaws. He's really quite bad defensively. I mean, even in that fight with Johnny Walker, he knocked Walker out with an arm that was, as that was happening, swelling up. His forearm was ballooning because he just sort of sloppily blocked a high kick a minute or two before that with like one arm, just sort of like swatted at a high kick that was coming at his head. He's really flailing and upright, and he doesn't tuck his chin. And
he really crosses his legs. Like he will walk perpendicularly around his opponent.
Yeah.
Like OSP was literally like low kicking him. OSP, I mean, this is one of the things that is troubling about Hill's particular run, is that it's being light heavyweight. He's only really fought, boxers. Like no one. I mean, I'd hesitate to call anyone he's fought like even boxers, but fought no one with like a coherent low kicking game because OSP gave that up a while back.
Well, I mean, OSP in that fight was.
Yeah, that was as much as we've seen from him, and it was very effective. But he also then got started to get smoked. It's one of those things where just being dynamic and accurate has been enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I guess it probably will be this time.
The trouble is, like, so many of these things should sound like huge alarm bells against Thiago Santos, right? Like.
Mm-hmm.
Overcommitting and just like flying in behind your punches, like all you need is a modicum of defense to make Jamal Hill miss, and you're going to get a huge opportunity. And we know Thiago Santos is himself a pretty scary counterpuncher, and huge susceptibility to kicks, like just being generally vulnerable defensively at long range. That should be a huge problem against Thiago too. It would have been, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, if you could trust Thiago Santos to throw anything.
Yeah. An earlier version of Thiago Santos, I think, would have been a seriously tough test for Hill. Not one that it would be impossible for Hill to just go in there and knock him out, but it would have been a difficult task where he would absolutely have had to take some serious damage and wade through some fire to make it happen. And that's why I'm going to pick Jamal Hill. Because I have zero confidence in Thiago Santos. I have about as much confidence, I think, in Thiago Santos as he appears to have in himself. Since his knee injury, he has not been the same fighter.
Yeah, I think it's. Let me have a brief think of. But what's Thiago's recent? So. The Ankalaev fight was uncompetitive.
Oh, it was quite competitive.
He beat Johnny Walker in an absolutely horrendous fight.
Yep.
Rakic was incredibly close, and then it's the Teixeira and then the Jones fight.
Yeah.
So, as far as it goes, despite the main problem is obviously that Santos is becoming becoming a really boring fighter to watch.
Yeah.
Much as I love him. And I can't blame him for that. He's been in the game for a long time now. It took him a long time to get formal training. Like, still love him. And yeah, both his fucking knees fell off.
Yeah.
So he can, he's 100% one of those fighters where he's done done enough cool stuff that I'm like, you can be as boring as you want now.
Yeah.
But
also,
like, it doesn't mean I'm going to enjoy watching it.
Yeah.
But that being said, like, yeah, all those fights are super close.
They're close in the wrong way, though.
Yeah.
Like, having a close fight with Ankalaev, on the one hand, is impressive.
I would say Ankalaev is on paper, you would say Ankalaev is actually a pretty bad matchup for Thiago Santos.
Yeah. Seems
right?
like it.
But, like, on paper, Jamal Hill is does not match up well with Thiago Santos at all.
Yeah.
So, I think I might pick Thiago Santos.
But the thing is with Ankalaev, what makes him a bad matchup for Thiago Santos?
That he can, like, move in behind his jab. He can low kick with Santos, and he can and he can actually offensively wrestle.
He attempted 2 takedowns in that fight.
Yeah.
Got one of them. The problem with having a close fight with Magomed Ankalaev, as Thiago Santos did, is that a lot of that has to do with Ankalaev. Like, we saw, we're going to talk about this for our bonus, we saw Ankalaev fight on this card last weekend. A fight which, like the light heavyweight fight a week before, his opponent essentially made him win. That I'm confident that Ankalaev would have had 15 minutes of relatively slow-paced kickboxing against Anthony Smith and been perfectly happy with that. Smith literally pulled guard, and Ankalaev even then was trying to get out. He's like, all right, well, I guess I'll just, beat you up from top position, and just instantly crushed Smith. There are areas of Ankalaev's game that should be, really bad for Santos, having those options at his disposal, but the way he has been going about his fights is to just have a close fight with everyone. So I don't know. I still don't think if you actually look at Santos in these fights, yes, they're close, but they're close in this way where it's like the opponent just can't blow through him, but he's not getting much done.
He arguably beat Rakic.
Yeah, but again, Rakic?
And again, admittedly, Rakic kind of sucks.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, the problem with Jamal Hill is he has one singular area of extreme potency, which he is going to press. I have no doubt about that.
But in doing that, he will allow himself to get counterpunched by Thiago Santos, which is the only thing Thiago Santos is willing to do anymore.
Yeah, but even that he's not that willing to do it. Thiago Santos is going to back himself into the fence and have to bank on that a relatively low-paced counterpunching style is going to stop Jamal Hill from knocking him out. That is what Jamal Hill is going to be going for. He's going to try to knock Thiago Santos' fucking block off. And he's going to do it having reach and being very quick and very accurate against a guy who's literally just going to corner himself and wait.
I guess you're right.
I'm not confident in Hill. And again, like, if I trusted Thiago Santos, I would feel like this would be a really bad matchup for Hill. But I do not trust Thiago to actually, like, seize an advantage and build on it at all. Like, even if he lands a counter, what's the effect of that? Is he then going to take over the fight? Probably just going to let Jamal Hill reset at range and kind of build his way back into an attack. So they have to be the perfect counters, and Hill has to have no answer to them, and they can't even necessarily just be like, because Hill might just have 50-50 exchanges, and he might lose those, but he also just might win them. Where they both get hit, and he had one of those with Johnny Walker at the end of their fight. It knocked Johnny Walker stiff on his feet. So yeah, I am leaning Jamal Hill here. It's purely because I do not trust Thiago Santos to actually build anything in his fights anymore.
Yeah, and I think it's also just that thing you said earlier, the heavy bag technician.
Yeah.
Is that Santos is going to, meaning to or not, going to remove one of Hill's primary flaws.
Yeah.
Which is his tendency to like move around and because he's just going to stand there and Hill is going to be able to walk up to him. And
yeah,
once he's settled in place, as he said, he's got very fast hand speed. He's does a genuinely good job of mixing up his targets. He crushed OSB against the fence. Yeah, you're right. I think there's just going to be too much time of like Santos just sitting there against the fence, and Ankalaev was just like, gonna land one punch, I'm winning. I'll make sure I throw a whole bunch of feints, and then I'll be able to land another punch, and then I'll be winning. Whereas, Hill is probably just gonna use that space to kill Santos.
Yeah, I mean, Santos is going to go for a shitload of low kicks. I mean, that is really the one thing. Like, even this version of Santos.
Thinking about it, I don't even know if he'll do that, because he is up against the fence so much.
Yeah, if he's getting pressured really hard, it's going to be a much harder time to actually get those shots off than against the relatively slow-paced assault of Ankalaev or the completely non-existent assault of Johnny Walker. Like, these are recent fights that were very slow-paced, and so Santos got a steady diet of low kicks in. But I don't think Jamal Hill has the ability to fight a slow-paced fight. I mean, if he tries, if he's like, oh, this is my first main event, now I have to like burn a first round, it could start off horribly and he never gets back into it. But
yeah,
I'm gonna pick him here.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, I'm just watching the Ankalaev fight again, and yeah, it's just that Thiago just cannot lead anymore. He just can't.
Yeah.
Can't just like charge after people, throwing bombs at them, which was something that he needed so illy to break up his game. He started leading more against Walker in that absolutely dreadful fight that they had.
Yeah,
that was Johnny Walker, and it took him like 3 rounds.
Yeah, and even then it was very piecemeal, and
yeah, it wasn't exactly like he was putting his foot on the gas.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's say, you're right. You swayed me. All Hill. Probably by finish.
That's kind of what I'm feeling, man. Yeah. It's always a bad sign, by the way, when I sway you. I mean, the last time I did this was swaying Zane to pick Chris Curtis. So this is obviously we're determining right now this is going to be the rebirth of Thiago Santos, but I don't know, man.
I mean, I'm willing to take that trade. I want Thiago Santos to have his success, even if it's going to be in a dreadfully boring fight. And I will take your status as an abomination against all things holy, and this way we can kind of turn it round to help Thiago Santos
That's
out.
right. My shame at being so wrong is a sort of currency which we can spend to get favorable results. I like that. Okay, well, picking Jamal Hill over Thiago Santos, literally the only other fight I care about on that card. I think is it a tough finale card, which is why it looks so particularly bad?
I think it might be.
Yeah, so this tough season that 3 people watched, probably one of whom was Juliana Pena. I doubt Amanda Nunes watched it. That's having its finale here. So the only other good fight on this card is Vicente Luque versus Jeff Neal, which is solid. Not really enough. So we're not even going to talk about any of it. Fortunately, Phil, next week, when we'll be tasked with recapping this card, we have the incredibly stacked Chito Vera versus Dominic Cruz card to look ahead to.
It isn't stacked, but at least it's a super compelling main event.
It has a main event. That at the very least is enough to get a nice, healthy segment. And who knows, maybe we'll have to talk about some boxing or something. Or cover some kind of topic. Okay, well, until then, thank you all for listening. I will admonish you once more to go check out our Patreon, where there's that boxing commentary I just posted. And you will also hear a few more thoughts on the undercard of UFC 277, which had plenty of highlights outside the 2 quote-unquote title fights. So that's patreon.com/heavyhands. Find us on Twitter, @EvilGregJackson, that is Phil, @BoxingBush, that is me. And until next week's exciting installment, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.